Hello and welcome to Week 3 NFL DFS with Pivot Point DFS. I am your host, Keith Cork. We are presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network, and we are a part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. Again, my name is Keith, and I am excited to be here with you guys to break down another exciting week in NFL DFS. Successful week last week, week 2. As much success as I would have wanted, no. We fell a little bit short of, cashing the big prizes, but we did hit the money and we got a little bit of money back in our pocket here to keep this thing going. So we'll look to build on that momentum. And I think it's a really, really interesting week this week with so many backup QB starters going and a very, very clear, chalky game stack, which we'll talk about here. There's a lot going on that I think gives us a lot of opportunities. So this is a very exciting week. We also have more data points, of course, going into week 3. So we have a little bit more, confidence in what we can consider, chalk and what can we consider. This is the wide receiver 1 of this team. This is the RB1 of this team. A lot of things have been revealed and a lot of things are still yet to be revealed for sure. But we have a lot more clarity on the situation in a lot of different areas. So first things first, let's break down our last week and how we did. Might want to go ahead and make that full screen. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you guys are watching on the, YouTubes, you will see this little kind of, visual thing that I create every week for recapping my things. If you're listening, just listen along. I will read everything out loud to you guys. So if you don't want to hear it, hey, skip forward 15 minutes or so and you'll get to all the good stuff for the upcoming week. Okay. But last week, yeah, how did things go? We always want to take a look at our results, I think, because it helps us to inform what we should do in the future. And, if you're not looking at results and just continue to do what you do, unless you have a really, really solid process, you're really just capping yourself and shooting yourself in the foot. You should really be looking at where your performance is, where you can improve, and things of that nature. And of course, sometimes there's going to be weeks where you're just wrong about things or it didn't work out in your favor. That is the nature of the beast, right? We are aiming to be right more than we're wrong, of course, but we are aiming for a big win here. We're going to be wrong a whole heck of a lot because we're going to have a lot of weeks where our pivots just simply don't work. They don't work out. And if we're not on the chalk, sometimes the chalk's going to hit. The chalk's a chalk for a reason, right? And a lot of people that do like to play the chalk say the same thing, right? They say that they want to play that because, I'm playing this player because it's a good game environment and because the projections are showing me that they're going to score highly. And those are there for a reason. That's what happened. But looking back at this last week here, what do we have going on? We did have a good Chicago-Detroit game stack that went off here with the Rome Odunze, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff in my SPY contest. That's what took it home. Running backs were Jonathan Taylor and James Conner. You mentioned I was on James Conner last week. Jonathan Taylor, I think, was in my orbit, but I didn't necessarily on him. There's also Laporta from that Detroit game, but they didn't really go out. He didn't really go off, but still, it was part of that game stack there. Teteroa McMillan is in this lineup as well as the Dolphins defense. 213.06 was the winning score of the SPY contest. So, definitely getting to higher scores week over week. Definitely a trend there. And it takes a lot more to win these things. But, there is more scoring in general across the slate. So when you are right, it's just hitting more right for you. It's not like we have, things are getting harder necessarily. It's just that things are getting more or offenses are getting better at scoring against the defenses in the NFL already, which is happening pretty early in the season here. On the screen pass, we've got kind of the same thing going on. There's a little bit of a Detroit Chicago stack here with Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rome Odunze. But they have some other pieces in this one, which again, this is a multiple entry. This is a 3-entry contest, so it's going to be a little bit different. Jahmyr Gibbs was in this lineup as well as Travis Etienne. Malik Neighbors, who I was on a whole bunch last week, was in this lineup, who absolutely went off. Jake Ferguson was in this lineup, which was an interesting choice for sure. Pickens also an interesting choice. Both those guys did go off against the Giants. The Giants, the big Giant stack, Dallas stack here as well. So he stacked 2 games. He or she stacked 2 games here, and they both worked out really well from that Giants Cowboys game. I got to watch a little bit of that. It was pretty exciting at the end there with them going into overtime and just lots of mistakes made, but definitely an exciting game to watch. Then the Titans was their defense. 229.56 is the final total there. So definitely A great lineup there. Congratulations to those teams. Here were the chalky people. And again, when I'm talking about chalk, I'm talking about who were most of the people rostering, not who scored the best, right? So in the QBs, we had Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow were all in the double digits in terms of ownership. And then Mac Jones, I included him here because I know I was really high on him. He was 9.06% owned. So he was pretty relatively high owned, but he was also min salary. So that makes a lot of sense there. The running backs that were highly owned on this slate, no surprise at all. Christian McCaffrey, Chase Brown, no surprise at all. Breece Hall, a little bit surprising, but he was highly owned here against the Buffalo Bills defense, which did terribly against the run in week 1. But of course, the Jets crapped the bed in week 2. So Travis Etienne was highly owned. Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, James Conner, who I was on, and then Derrick Henry was 10.62% owned. So those were the guys that had double-digit ownership on this slate. Running back on the running back position. Wide receivers, no surprise at all. Hollywood Brown, 29.77%, followed by CeeDee Lamb. Mildly surprising, I think. I'm going to have my chalk plays here. I've been looking at the week ahead, so I made this a couple days ago. I can't remember what I had on my chalk calls, but I don't think I had CeeDee Lamb. Jamar Chase, always going to have high ownership, but maybe not now with Browning. We'll talk a little bit about that too, but 21.37% on this week 2 slate. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not going to roster him, guys. It's just not going to happen. People do love him. I think he's going to have some weeks where he absolutely pops off, but just yikes on the Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. Connection there just doesn't seem to be there. I'm not super excited about it, and they want to run the ball a whole heck of a lot. So that's why I want Travis Etienne a whole lot. T. Higgins was highly owned. Garrett Wilson. So there were definitely some Jets Buffalo stacks going on here. It feels like, which that was a game that people were targeting, not me at all, for sure, which is good because the Buffalo Bills absolutely destroyed them. And the Bills are hard to nail down who they're going to throw to as well, but I digress. Tyreek Hill was also highly owned, as well as Chris Olave. And my guy, Devontae Smith, who I told you all to roster. My bad. We'll talk about that soon, but he was pretty highly owned, 11.88%. In the SPY contest that I'm in. For the tight ends, no surprise at all. Harold Fannin Jr., top guy, 27.55%. This is my biggest pivot. So pivot point DFS, we want to pivot. Find these pivot points. This was my biggest pivot call of the week by far. Over 1 in 4 lineups had Harold Fannin in their lineup, and didn't work out. How'd that work out for you guys? Not that well, huh? Trey McBride was next, and then Brenton Strange. And then finally, my guy, Juwan Johnson, was 9.42% owned. So that was the chalk in terms of ownership. I told you guys I also want to kind of switch it up and take a look at who the top performers in each position was, and then kind of make some observations there and go week to week to give you a little bit of a breakdown there as well. So top performers in the QB were Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Bryce Young, Lamar Jackson, and Drake May. All those guys scored about 26 FanDuel points or higher, and they all absolutely smashed it. On the running backs, it was Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Devon Achane. James Cook is having an incredible start to the season, by the way. Javonte Williams and Christian McCaffrey. All those guys had 23-ish or more DraftKings points. This is DraftKings, my bad. And then wide receivers, we had Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase, Rome Odunze, and Wan'Dale Robinson, and that was all 31 or so DK points or higher. And then for the tight ends, the least exciting of the positions easily, we had Ferguson, Juwan Johnson, Trey McBride, Jatavian Sanders, and Tyler Warren. All those guys had about 12 I keep saying FanDuel, DraftKings points, fantasy points or higher for them. So out of 4 out of the top 20 plays had only 4 of these are 20 guys I just mentioned here. Only 4 of them had double-digit ownership. So that just goes to show you, how right can we be? How good are our projections? How good are we all at playing this thing? Outside of a select few people, a lot of us can have a lot of misses. Okay, so it's okay if your lineup didn't cash. You're picking the wrong people. Just have faith. Stick with it. One of the weeks it's going to work out for you. Hopefully, it will work out in a big way. That's what we're hoping for here. 2 out of 10 of the most owned wide receivers hit 3x value. So of those guys I showed you on the previous page that, there were 10 of them, 2 of those guys hit 3x value, only 2 of them. 2 out of the 4 of the most rostered tight ends hit 3x value. 2 out of 5 of the most rostered QBs hit 3x value, and 2 out of 8 of the most rostered are running backs hit 3x value. So, 3x value. There's no real, like, people always want to say, how much, you have to 3x, 4x, 5x your value. What is it? There's no like rule of thumb. There's no general cut and dry. This is what you need to do. It's all dependent on the slate, right? If every single running back craps the bed, you don't need to have 3x from your running back, right? You can have a 2x or 2.5x or maybe even a 1.5x from your running back, and it's totally fine, right? As long as you just didn't spend up there. You didn't spend a lot of salary there because they didn't have a great game. They didn't smash and score a lot of points. Or conversely, a lot of people are on the same running backs and they crap the bed and no other running back does well. It doesn't literally matter. So it's all dependent on the slate, guys. Like there's no cut and dry, hard and fast rule of thumb. That's not how this works, right? It's all dependent on the slate. On this slate, 29.6% of the top 27 picks identified as chalk, double-digit ownership basically, or higher, had 3x value. So only about 30%. Okay. That's pretty good. I mean, 30% of that, and then, 3 out of 10 that we chose as most often hit 3x value. That's really not that bad, considering how many choices there are on a 12-game slate. So take that for what it is. Okay, so here's my chalk calls from last week. These are the guys I was pretty I have a far more calls for chalk this week. I think I have a better beat on where people are going to be going on this slate than I did in week 2. But these were my calls here. I had Christian McCaffrey. Yep, he absolutely was chalk. I had Devontae Chan. Yep, chalk. Chase Brown, chalk. Yep. Javonte Williams, big miss for me here, guys. Big miss. I thought for sure with that week 1 performance, people were going to be all over Javonte Williams. He fell in the end zone a few times. I really didn't see the ceiling there. I'm definitely coming around though after another solid showing in week 2. But yeah, I thought he would be at least 10% owned, definitely like double-digit ownership, and that wasn't the case. I think he turned out to be about 6-7% owned, something like that. Actually, I think I have it right here. Yeah, 4.8% owned. So 4.8% owned. I believe that was in my spy contest. So in the 3 entry one, the screen pass, probably about the same. It was very similar numbers on both sides. So under 5% owned, and I called him chalk, and that was wrong with me. I expected him to be twice as much owned. Maybe a little bit of that is just me being caught in my echo chamber, right? Where it's like I'm listening to all these people that play this game a lot, played at a high level, and I'm thinking that's what everyone's going to do. When I'm, the general public, they're still not on Javonte Williams train. They still don't believe in him because he's had the injury history. He hasn't really been that good in a few years. So, that's my bad. I should have definitely, if I would have identified him as a pivot play as opposed to chalk, or if I would have just identified him as chalk and decided, hey, he's still going to go under owned compared to what I think, this would have been a big win. It didn't happen. So, that was a wrong call. That was one of the pivots that we did wrong there. T. Higgins I called as a chalk play. Yes, he was there. Jamar Chase. Puka Nacua? No, not chalk. He was 11.64% owned. So, borderline chalk, but for wide receivers, we had a lot of concentration, a lot higher ownership on those guys. So I wouldn't consider that chalk for this position. He was 12th most owned wide receiver on the slate. So borderline chalk. I'm still going to give myself a loss there, but it was close. But I think, he's just always going to be a very solid play, just in terms of, all of the volume that he's getting. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here as well. Malik Neighbors, I thought would be chalk. He was only 7.3% owned. Luckily, I was all over this. So even though something's chalk, I may still be on it if I think, it's still coming in with an ownership level that is something that we can still deal with, right? It has to do with price point, right? If his price point makes sense because we're getting to other plays that we really need to or want to get to, and he's still putting up, 3, 4, 5x value, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? We still want to eat that chalk, right? So we don't need to pivot every single chalk play. We just need to identify the ones where we do need to pivot. And, when they're clear, we want to go hard at those. When they're a little bit unclear, a little bit murky, we want to kind of hedge our bets a little bit, but anyways, Hollywood Brown I called as a chalk play. Obviously, that was very easy. Xavier Worthy wasn't going to play. He was wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. I started feeling a little uneasy about it later in the week, but I still went with him, and I think every one of my lineups. So There you go. He didn't play well. We'll talk about that soon too, but he didn't play very well. Trey McBride, I called as a chalk play. Yep, he was there. Travis Kelce, I thought would be chalky. That Eagles Kansas City Chiefs game, I told you guys that was one that I was really interested in stacking. I thought a lot of people would have interest in that. I was still on Kelce if I was able to get to him. I didn't end up getting to him because I had Juwan Johnson everywhere on every single one of my lineups, which worked out very well, obviously. But Kelce, he was not a chalk play. He was only 4.6% owned. Didn't really smash anyway, so it didn't really matter too much. Howard fan, and of course, one of the easiest calls as well. My personal top plays. I was told you I was going to give you fewer top plays. I have a confession to make, and you're not going to like me for it. But anyways, let's go through these. Christian McCaffrey was okay. He had 22.7 fantasy points on 7.5K salary. He was 52.3% owned. So, every single person had him. He was kind of necessary. He was the highest scoring running back on slate. So it is what it is. It was a fine call there. Devontae Smith was a guy I was all over, thinking the Eagles would have to pass more, thinking that without Goddard, he would be able to get more of the underwork, thinking, it was a good spot for him. 9.3 fantasy points. No, it's not going to do it for us on 5.6K salary. He was 11.9% owned. So a fine pivot, like his ownership was fine. It was just around where Puka Nakua's was. And as I said, it's kind of borderline chalk, but it's not really. It's different enough that it's valuable, but the results weren't there, right? Cortland Sutton, 2.6% owned. Great call in terms of ownership and being a pivot. 0.25x his value, 1.6 fantasy points on 6.3K salary. Ouch. Terrible. And I will say I pivoted off of him towards the end of the week. I'm sorry. I know I called him one of my plays. When I'm talking about my plays, these are guys I'm higher on. I did have him in one of my lineups. These are guys I'm higher on than the general consensus, the general field, by a good margin, right? And or chalk that I'm going to eat, the field's on them, but I think they're still under owned where they need to be. Their price just makes them too attractive that we can't pass it up. And so, I still think Sutton was a good call in terms of that, but not a good game. Not a good game. Then Juwan Johnson, of course, was the big win for me. 9.4% owned only, 4.4x value at 15.9 fantasy points and 3.6K salary. Where do we get the X value? I was going to mention that, but just so you guys know, very easy. Just take their salary, right, and divide it by, I think it's 100, right, to make it so instead of 3,600, 3.6, just a lot easier there, and then divide their fantasy points by that number. That's your X, right? So if their salary was 2 and they scored 4, they have 2x value, right? 2K, I should say. Their salary was 2K. Key pivots I identified in the podcast last week. I'm only going to mention 3 guys, really. I identified quite a few, but there's really just 3 that we need to talk about here that was higher on than most people. Mac Jones, great spot. I had him in one of my lineups in my Screen Pass, contest. And he was 94.4% owned, 9.4%, 5.7x value because that min salary. He went off 22.76 fantasy points and 4K was his salary. He's min salary. James Conner was the other guy. Not great, 12.2 fantasy points, but it really didn't hurt you, honestly. He was only 1.8x value, but you could have him. As you saw, the winning lineup had him in him. I had him in one of my both my winning lineups. I think we'll see in a minute here, but I had him at least one of my winning lineups. So he didn't sink you, but he wasn't great. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's the guy you really didn't say. I won't say you needed to have him because Malik Neighbors went off. Jamar Chase had a good game. There's some people had good games, but Amon-Ra was only 6.2% owned. So it's kind of the big difference there, right? Even Malik Neighbors was 7.3% owned. So you're just getting so much leverage on the rest of the field. There's a little bit under the 94% of the field did not have him. And 42.2 fantasy points, 6x value on 7K salary. That's money. Absolutely fantastic, right? So some other notes, the min cash line in both of my contests here for the SPY was 147.54. That was versus 122.02 last week. So, 25 points or so difference. Screen Pass, it was 149.7 versus 122.92 last week. So all in all, just a higher scoring slate, right? And more people on plays that it's becoming more apparent who we should be rostering, right? These are going to fall again when the bye weeks start, just because overall production is going to be down. There's fewer options, so therefore, in general, right, there's always a possibility that we have a weird week where everyone goes off, but in general, the scores will come down again once those buys start, but you should expect about the same this week. I would say you're going to get to about 145, 150, somewhere in that range. We'll see, but that would be my guess. Is that, it's going to be up around that value there. We have 13 games this week as opposed to 12 games last week as well, so that extra game might throw things off a little bit. We stacked the correct game with the Bears and Lions, but I went on the Bears side to the Lions, so that was really. It feels like you're so close sometimes, right? And I did have him on Raw, which you'll see in a lineup, which should cash, but I didn't have a Dunze, right? I would have like Swift or something like that. I wasn't really high in a Dunze, but it is clear at this point that he is wide receiver one. I think I did actually have a Dunze in one of my winning lineups, but we'll take a look here in a minute. Devontae Smith, he was tackled at the 1 yard line, guys. So one of the things that, we look at numbers and we can't just look at numbers, right? We have to see what the situation is. It would have bumped me up into the top 115 or so in my main, the spy, contest would have given me another $100, $150, something like that. So real big bummer there, but he was tackled at the 1 yard line, almost scored near the end of that game. I was significantly worse at identifying chalk this week, but more chalk end up hitting. So, not a good thing for me, but it was a better week for me. So, just kind of an interesting observation there. My primary pivot was from Harold Fannin Jr. to Juwan Johnson, and those are absolutely the ideas the opportunities we're looking for. And I think we have some really good ones on this week 3 slate as well. So my performance here, for the spy contest, we had, I think I actually have these swapped around. I think for my spy contest here, we had Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, Devontae Smith, Hollywood Brown, Malik Neighbors, Juwan Johnson, James Conner, and the Titans. So solid lineup. Patrick Mahomes ended up having a really good game. I was happy with that. But of course, his wide receiver one crapped the bed, and that's Hollywood Brown. Devontae Smith, as I said, got tackled at the 1 yard line. If he scores that touchdown, was he get 15, 16 points somewhere? Yeah, in that range, right? And that's really not that bad for a 5.6K player, but he didn't get there. It is what it is. I did have Javonte Williams in this one, of course, so he smashed. Christian McCaffrey was just plug in every single one of my lineups. Juwan Johnson, as I mentioned before, great call there. Malik Neighbors, as I mentioned before, great call there as well. Probably the guy I was behind Devontae Smith that was touting the hardest. And then James Conner was my guy that, again, didn't hurt you, but he was there. He did his thing. And then Titans is whatever. On my screen pass winning lineup, I had Caleb Williams as my quarterback. I did have Rome Odunze here, so I did end up with him, luckily. Amon-Ra St. Brown was my bring back. So, again, I just ended up on the wrong side there. The Lions absolutely spanked the Bears. Luckily for me, Odunze got 2 of the touchdowns for the Bears, so that really helped me out there. And then Christian McCaffrey, of course, a plug-in on my lineups. Chase Brown, really terrible week for him. 8.5 was his fantasy points. It was a nice spot, 23.9% ownership. Not a great play in my opinion, but it is what it is. Devontae Smith, I had him in basically every lineup. James Conner. And then Seahawks was my defense. And I think the Seahawks are still a little bit underrated in terms of their defense, but luckily they had a really good game as well to help carry me through. So overall, week 1, I was down 145. Week 2, I'm up 90. So overall, I'm down 55 still. But hey, still in the game. Still working on this whole thing we call DFS. And that is our week 2 wrap up there. It took a little longer than I thought. Sorry about that, guys. Let's go into week 3, though. And, it is a really, 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 really interesting week. Again, we've got these. That's not what I want. We've got these, backup QBs are going to be in. We've got a game that everybody in their mother is targeting. We have a lot of interesting stuff going on here. I'm going to clear this out. Sorry about that. And, there's a lot going on here. So let's take a look here. Let's see, first of all, what we think the chalk's going to be. And the first thing I want to talk about here, just first and foremost, why make you wait for the candy? Let's talk about that Dallas Chicago game. And you guys know I've been looking at these Chicago games, trying to stack them. I had a little bit of that last week. Not that I'm high. I mean, I do think I'm higher than Bears than most everyone is, especially now. But just the fact that their defense is so bad and their offense is going to have to score, and if that offense starts clicking, the ceiling is really high with Ben Johnson. I mean, we've seen some really good things from the offense under Ben Johnson. I know people are really down on Caleb. He's been hit or miss. He's been inconsistent, no doubt about it. But when he's on, and when the throws are there, and when he's on target, this team does have a pretty high ceiling. So that I get this game. If nobody else was interested in this game, I would be all over it. Unfortunately, we're probably looking at a good 2 out of every 5 lineups stacking this game, and I'm not joking. Like this game is being pumped up so much, and if we're doing a single stack in a clear game, if it's about 10 or 12% ownership, or over that, in a top heavy GPP like this that we're playing in, we just don't want to play that. We want to play a contrarian lineup. Once the ownership reaches low double digits, splitting the top prizes, even if that chalk does hit, it takes away from your expected value. The expected share of the highest payout is just going to be much smaller. So there's no reason to play the main stacks that people are telling you to play out there, which was Rome Odunze, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, right? Now there are some smaller or some lesser known players in this game that I think are not lesser known, but players are going to have less ownership that I think we can definitely consider and need to as one-off pieces. But I'm not stacking this game. I'm just not doing it. Right? I'm not going to stack this game at all because it's just the expected value of that doesn't make any sense. Okay, if the payout's extremely heavy, top heavy, the ownership threshold to go contrarian is lower, and that's what we're playing in right now. We're talking about GPP and cash games. Have at it. You're kind of nuts if you'd fade this game. In cash games, you should be playing this game. I'd go for the lesser pieces I'm going to talk about here, but yeah, you should be playing this game. In GPPs, it's quite the opposite. But I do expect Dak Prescott at 5.9K to be heavily owned. I do expect Caleb Williams at 5.6K to be heavily owned. CeeDee Lamb at 8K, also going to be very heavily owned. And probably the highest ownership of all these guys is going to be Rome Odunze at 5.3K. So, who are some guys I'm looking at that might be overlooked, lesser owned? George Pickens, 5.9K for him, I think is a nice spot for sure. If this game does go off, right? It's at the moment, let's see on FanDuel, the current over under for this game is set at 50.5, and I'm fairly sure I opened it like 49.5, something along those lines. Actually, I can look at that. But here we go. Total. The game opened at 47.5. And now it's at 50.5. So, definitely people putting it over there. I get it. Makes sense. All the sense in the world. There's no guarantee that happens, of course. So if this game does end up crapping out, I mean, that's really big for me because I'm not going to be on it that much. But I do think George Pickens, if this game does go off 5.9K, we did see that, he's going to, that he can have big games. Last week, he had a pretty nice one. Tyreek Stevenson on the Bears is terrible. One of the most heavily targeted corners in the entire league. And there's going to be plays when Pickens is going to draw his coverage. So I think it's a totally fine play. I think, on the running back side, DeAndre Swift at 5.6K. Assuming he plays, I know he's banged up a little bit. He may be sitting out. If he does sit out, Kamanon guy has to be on our radar at 4.1K. I'm not super excited about it, but it is such a low, salary. You got to be at least somewhat interested in it. But DeAndre Swift, I think at 5.6K is a nice pivot off of what the general consensus is going to play as well. Javonte Williams, I'm just not playing. 6.1K, his salary's climbed. I still have my reservations, right? I think the Bears have been actually pretty decent against the run, right? It's more of a pass funnel type of defense. So if I'm going to place anything on the and the Dallas side, I think it's going to be Pickens. I think it's going to be it for me. On the Bears side, it's most likely going to be DeAndre Swift, and that's it for me. Maybe I get to Caleb Williams and DJ Moore as a stack. Maybe. I just don't really want to stack this game. I mean, there's like a 2% chance I get there, right? But DJ Moore is another guy that I would be somewhat interested in. The chemistry is not looking great there. Of course, I'm a Bears fan. I watch every game, but it's not looking very solid for me. So I'm definitely not super interested in it. So another QB that I think is going to be heavily owned is Carson Wentz, right? That game is interesting for sure. We're going to have two backups going. There it is, Minnesota against Cincinnati. We got Jake Browning. We've got Carson Wentz. And Browning, of course, is 5.5K. There's no reason to play Browning. There's really not, because you can play Marcus Mariota. You can play Carson Wentz. You can play Tyrod Taylor if you wanted, right? These guys are all I haven't looked at. I'm not interested in playing Tyrod Taylor, but I'm pretty sure Tyrod's got to be 4K, right? He's 4.8K. So, but you have two guys here in Mariota and in Carson Wentz that are 4K, that are actually rock bottom pricing. So I'm really not interested in playing Browning. Don't see any reason you would ever want to do that, honestly. But I am interested, a little bit interested in Carson Wentz. I think that's interesting. I would play him more, but I'm more interested in Jordan Mason in that game, right? Because there is going to be no Aaron Jones. This is definitely chalk for sure. But Jordan Mason's going to be 5.4K. He's probably going to be like 55 to 60, as much owned as Christian McCaffrey was. But with the price point, it makes all the sense in the world, right? He's going to get, his coach is even talking about, Kevin O'Connell's talking about him getting a quote unquote bell cow role, right? And you're talking about going against a pretty weak defense all around in the Bengals, and an even weaker run defense. Our run defense is just pretty bad. He's more of a bruiser for sure. Definitely not going to get a whole lot of passes out of the backfield. He had 3 targets in their last game, and that was a career high for him. So interesting for sure. But I just don't see any way around playing him in terms of what other running backs are in that price point. Like, I'll give you some names here around that 5.4K price point. You're talking about Travion Henderson. You're talking about Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. You're talking about Jalen Warren. You're talking about Ramondre Stevenson. So, in that price range, within a couple $100, he's clearly by far and away the best play. And I see no reason why you shouldn't roster him. I think he's going to be in every single one of my lineups, similar to how I treated Christian McCaffrey last week. So, but yeah, that's the reason I'm not interested in Carson Wentz. But Wentz is for sure interesting here. If you do want to go with Wentz, where's my game here? There we go. If you do want to go with Wentz, who is 4K, obviously you can stack him with Justin Jefferson. That's a little bit on the nose if you ask me. 7.5K. I think the upside and the ceiling of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are kind of capped with their backups in, right? They are backups for a reason. Their physical skill sets are less. The probability of a ceiling game is less with those guys as their QBs, right? That's what I'm going to say. And I could see a game where Minnesota really controls the rock here with Carson Wentz, and they don't really, they don't have to air it out. There's no reason to, honestly. I do think the Minnesota is the stronger team for sure. I think the Bengals are going to sorely miss Joe Burrow, and I think Brownie's fine, but I just think that the line is a problem, and they're going to have a real issue throwing the ball on the field, I think, to Jamar Chase. So I'm not super into this game. I know some people are talking about stacking it and stuff like that. I'm probably not going to go that route. If you're going to go with a wide receiver to go with your Carson Wentz call, I like Jalen Naylor, 3,800, definitely filling in for a lot of snaps for that Jordan Addison role. So 3,800 is a really easy, price point here. Another guy I like here for the Minnesota Vikings is TJ Hawkinson. And I know this is definitely a risky move for sure. He's had a terrible start to the season. Has 4 receptions on the season for 27 yards. So not very exciting at all. But we do know Carson Wentz likes to target his tight ends. I believe I heard something along the lines of 21% of his passing attempts go to tight ends across his career. So, maybe a little bit of sample bias there with who his tight ends were or something like that. I haven't looked that far into it, but I do think he's an interesting sneaky play at 3,800 that people aren't going to be on because it is risky for sure. Not really interested in the Cincinnati side of the ball, to be honest with you guys. Another running back that's going to be chalk is going to be Bijan Robinson. No doubt about it. This Carolina defense is terrible against the run. In week 1, they got absolutely gutted by the Jaguars, right? And Travis Etienne had 143 yards. So, definitely a nice matchup here for Bijan. Last week, not as exciting with the Cardinals. They didn't have as much success on the ground against them, but James Conner put up a decent game. It was 30 yards in the pass game. So, and we know Bijan likes to get those passes and take it to the house. So, I think this is a great matchup for him, no doubt. Another guy that I expect to be, chalky that I'm in on is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is absolutely getting bell cow role here in the Colts offense. And he has a really decent matchup here against the Tennessee Titans, where the Colts should be able to control this game because the Titans are pretty darn terrible. So I do think Jonathan Taylor is definitely on the menu here. I'm going to have him in more places than not. I'm aiming to at least. 165 yards last week against the Broncos. This Colts offense is running the rock more than over expectation by a good margin. So it is definitely a run first type offense. And so you would definitely want to have a part of that. And he was on the field for over 90% of the plays, right? So he's on the field a whole heck of a lot. It's a run first offense, and they have a terrible matchup. So, boom, it checks all 3 check boxes for me. I like him a lot. He's 7.2K. Christian McCaffrey, 8.2K, probably going to get a decent amount of ownership. He would honestly probably be more of a pivot, but I think he is still going to be technically qualified as chalk. He's probably going to go under owned compared to what his value is going to be. But he is 8.2K now. Let's see, he came up from 7.5K, so a good $700 increase for him. He's finally priced appropriately. I mean, that 49ers offense isn't getting a whole lot of push to get him down the field. So his running hasn't been super successful this season. He is definitely always a threat to catch the ball and, get a lot of yards that way. So definitely looking for a decent, good game from him. I think he's going to be the center point of the offense for sure. But I just don't think he's going to have that ceiling that we want with that price tag. I'm out on him. I'm not in on Christian McCaffrey this week. And then, Javonte Williams, like I said, I'm fading him as well, but I do expect him to be chalky. I expect a lot of people to have him, despite the fact that I expect a lot of people to have CeeDee Lamb and maybe even George Pickens and Ferguson as well. I think they're going to, all be pretty highly owned compared to the rest of the field. But I do think Javonte Williams is one of those guys is an easy fade for me, just because if those touchdowns aren't there, if the Bears just give too many points via the pass, the ceiling's just not there for me. So I'm not in on them. For the wide receivers, I do think CeeDee Lamb gets a whole lot of ownership. Again, I'm not playing him. Puka Nacua is another guy that I expect to get a whole lot of ownership as well. And I mentioned already in the opening, I'm on him. I think there's no doubt, you want to go ahead and play this guy. It is nice. It's going to be a nice matchup here. And one thing I wanted to show you guys, one thing you should be aware of all the time is, wow, nice. Wasn't sharing my screen again. Sorry for that, all you YouTubers. One of the things I did want to show you guys, though, before we get into Puka Nacua, is I did want to show you guys, here. Now, I don't have a paid membership to this. I wouldn't show you anyways if I did, because that's just not, I wouldn't do that. But for this Rams-Eagles game, I'm on the totals. We want to look at the spread. For this Rams-Eagles game, it started as a 4.5 point spread in favor of the Eagles. Makes sense, right? It's moved to a 3.5 or a 3-point spread for the Eagles, which, and we're seeing 68% of the bets. Now, I don't know what the percentage of the money is. There might be a whole lot of big dollar bets coming in on the Rams, I should say. But in terms of percentage of the overall bets, 68%. This is a huge skew right here, right? I don't think the money could be that skewed because we have nearly 70%, nearly 7 out of 10 people are betting on the Eagles in this game. And yet we're getting line movement towards encouraging us to bet on the Eagles. That's called reverse line movement, right? That's big. That's big. That means the Rams may have a good shot here of covering this spread. This is going to be a close game. This is going to be a 3-point game or less, right? So, a competitive game, wide receiver 1. Let me see here. I'm going to show you guys something else here as well, regards to Puka Nacua. Well, man, StreamYard sucks, guys. I don't know why. I'm sorry. It keeps taking you off my screen and not sharing what I want to share. But Puka Nacua is here we go. Target per route run. Boop. Maybe it's user error. Probably user error. Target per route run leaders, wide receivers through 2 weeks. Thank you to Jacob Gibbs for this a little information here. But he's second, 43%. So every route he runs, he gets targets on 43% of them. And he's running a whole heck of a lot of routes. He's getting so much volume. And that first guy there, Jackson Smith-Njigba, I also am going to go ahead and say he's going to be chalky, and I am going to be buying him as well. He's number 1 on this list at 44%. So those are 2 guys I'm going to be all over for sure. But yeah, this Puka Nacua in a close game, against the Eagles, I think this is going to be an interesting one for sure. And one I'm interested in stacking as well. We can talk about that at the end here, but I am interested in stacking this one as well. There we go, guys. There we go. Okay, so yeah, Puka Nacua definitely someone I'm interested in. The Eagles here, I might be interested in stacking that as well. Going on here though to the next one, Jackson Smith-Njigba. So yeah, as I said, targets per route run are really great. Let's take a look here at the matchup. Excuse me. Here it is. I can get a fantastic matchup here in the Saints, and the Saints are one of those teams that they're just so bad, right? They're so bad that I think anyone can go off against them. This is I'm highly interested in stacking a little bit of Darnold and Jackson Smith-Njigba, just hoping that they can keep that going. Cooper Kupp seems like a kind of a thing of the past at this point. So, and of course, on the New Orleans side, I'm going to be rostering Juwan Johnson again everywhere. 3,900, not enough of a price increase for me when he's on the field for virtually every snap. I think the floor is absolutely as safe as it can be. And that's really all I'm looking for in my tight end. And, you're looking at other tight ends under 4K. I mean, I did already mention Hawkinson, but definitely obviously risk associated there. But, other tight ends under 4K. I mean, just show me one that's got that kind of floor. I just don't see it. Maybe Hunter Henry. You could argue, but I really don't think so. Harold Fans, 3,600. I mean, he's interesting. He's going to have those games where he pops, but the floor is just not there because he's not even playing the tight end role, right? He's playing more of a wide receiver type role, and Njoku's really playing the tight end role. I would rather have Njoku, and personally, against this Green Bay Packers defense. So, I'm pretty. There's no one under 4K that's that interesting. I don't want to spend up. I don't really want to get to Trey McBride. The one guy I would spend up for just because of the work he is getting is Tyler Warren. He is banged up though. Last I saw, he had he returned to practice. So he's a limited practice. Probably going to end up playing. He's a little bit banged up, but he is interesting for sure. Tucker Kraft is the one I was thinking of. Sorry, they had the knee issue. That it's like, oh, he's okay. And so I'm not really interested in that because I'm just not sure what that's supposed to mean. We saw what Brock Bowers did coming back from injury last game and looked a little bit hobbled, looked a little bit slower, wasn't really as involved as he could be. So that could be the same case for Tucker Kraft. Speaking of Brock Bowers, I really don't think he's going to be 100% still in this game, so I'm not interested in spending up for him either. So, really the only option I see here is Juwan Johnson. Kyle Pitts is the other guy I might be a little bit interested in. He's definitely a guy that is involved. Another guy that plays more like a wide receiver than a tight end. And, if we don't roster Bijan, we can look at rostering some Kyle Pitts, I think. And he's a little bit cheaper than Juwan. So if you really need that extra $100, I just don't really see a reason for it, honestly. But if you really need to, that is an option for you there. Keenan Allen, I mentioned Roma Dunze also, of course. He's going to be probably the highest owner wide receiver on the slate. I'm not interested. I'm fading. Absolutely. I just think that in terms of the ownership here, in terms of what I'm trying to do, in cash, play him all day. But for me, for GPPs, there's no way. Keenan Allen, and maybe DJ Moore gets all those touchdown catches. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Keenan Allen, 2 touchdowns back-to-back weeks. It's hard for me to buy into it. It is a tough defense, right? It's the Broncos. Surtain's there. They still have a tough pass defense. We did just see the Colts perform really well against it. And Herbert's on another level. He's playing really, really good football right now. Probably the best QB play you've seen in this young season so far. But I just, why, if they don't have to, push the ball down the field, why are they going to, right? And I think, the red zone targets are interesting. At some point, Ladd McConkey's going to have his big game. Quentin Johnson's been having good games as well, but Ladd McConkey has been kind of a forgotten man. And just something about this is telling me, and this is not really everything I'm telling you guys is trying to come from numbers and what we're seeing out there. But at some point, it's got to be a Ladd McConkey game, right? And this might be it. I don't want to mess with it. It's a good defense, so I might as well just let it go anyways. I'm not playing it, but I do expect Keenan Allen to have high ownership. Trey McBride going to have high ownership as well. I mentioned Tyler Warren and Juwan Johnson, but I think Trey McBride, just because of the safety of him for cash games, definitely going to have high ownership there. I think he'll have high ownership in GPPs as well, just as a safe option. At only 5.7K, it's not like he's ridiculously expensive. So some of the pivots I like. I already mentioned Sam Darnold. I am pretty interested in stacking Sam Darnold with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not super interested in playing Cooper Kupp, obviously. Darnold has a really nice salary, though, at 5.1K. This is a matchup where he should be able to take advantage. This is a terrible defense in the Saints. We can bring it back with guys like Olave, right? Or we can bring it back with Alvin Kamara, who's really interesting this week at 6.3K. So those are some guys, those are some game stacks I'd be looking at for sure. And as you know, I want to play Juwan Johnson. So Juwan Johnson and Jackson Smith will probably be in 80% of my lineups, right? Easily. Another guy I'm super interested in is Drake May. Drake May also has a really interesting or a really nice salary and a really interesting matchup here in the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have really been bad on defense as of late. Not sure what's going on there. Their defense has all the same pieces as last year, but they're just not performing to the standards that they've probably set for themselves, right? 5.3K is a really good price for a young QB that had a really nice week last week. He scored 26.3 DK points here, only 16.78 in week 1, but that's still okay. Like, that's not sinking you, right? So seems like a pretty safe floor, and I think it's a pretty high ceiling, honestly. The question is, who do you stack him with, right? And, Keyshawn Boutte is going to be the answer that everyone's going to go to, I think. And, it makes sense. He is running a lot of routes, getting a lot of targets. Only had one last game, though, so it's a little scary for sure. But he had a really good week 1. I think for me, one of the reasons Boutte's not as appealing to me is because Stephon Diggs is going to continue to ramp up and become the wide receiver 1 in New England. I mean, I don't think there's that's really that controversial of a take. Didn't see as many targets either in week 2, but he did have a decent game, 32 yards, caught 4, not getting super long passes yet. He's not fully up there yet, but if I do want to go with Drake May, he is the wide receiver I'm going to stack him with. I'm going to have a lineup like that. So, and I'm going to bring it back on the Pittsburgh side. I think you can bring it back with Jaylen Warren, but for me, the most interesting thing is DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is another pivot that I'm interested in this week, just, by himself in general. I think he's a really interesting guy. He's 1 touchdown away from a milestone, and so is Aaron Rodgers. I expect them to link up on one, so I feel like there's a pretty decent floor here. Hasn't had that big blow up game yet, and it's coming, right? We've got Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers globs onto a receiver, he can carry them to a big game. So I'm interested in that for sure. Another QB I'm interested in here, Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, if you look at his last couple of games, he had a little over 30 yards rushing in one game, a little bit over 40 in the game before that. So those are the last couple of games that he started. If I can find him ever, there we go. There we go. Minimum salary, of course, right? Because we weren't expecting him to be out at the beginning of the week when they made the pricing here. But just, has the weapons there in Washington. Zach Ertz, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin. And he did have 2 passing touchdowns in his last start for this Washington Commanders team, which isn't drastically different from last season. Had a really good game in his one start there. So I think, this is a really decent spot for him. But the rushing potential is really what kind of pushes him over the edge over Carson Wentz for me. If Carson Wentz doesn't connect on, a couple touchdown passes, I don't think you're going to get the kind of value you're going to get from Marcus Mariota. So my kind of conditions in my head that I'm thinking of are either 2 touchdown passes for Carson Wentz, or we're going to have 30, 40 rushing yards from Marcus Mariota. That kind of evens it out, right? Because I think Mariota is going to have enough passing yards, and he's going to have probably at least 1 passing touchdown. If he can run in a touchdown, even better. But I think, in terms of ownership versus what their floor versus ceiling is, I do think that Mariota is the more attractive option for me. And I like the fact that I can run him naked. I can run him without a receiving option because he does have that rushing potential. Whereas Wentz, I want to play Jordan Mason in all my lineups. So I'm not going to stack him with his receivers. It's just not going to happen. So I think for me, it's Mariota. If I'm going to go for the, low bottom of the barrel, not bottom of the barrel, but minimum pricing QB, Mariota is still a very talented quarterback, right? Compared to the rest of the world, right? Compared to other NFL QBs, maybe not so much, but he is still definitely a serviceable backup. So I do like Mariota quite a bit here. And I like to run him. If I'm going to run him, I think I'm going to run naked. So there you go. Running backs that are pivots that I'm into, Breece Hall at 6K, Kenneth Walker. If Charbonnet is out, I have to get me some Kenneth Walker at 5.8K. Finally, that Seattle offense is looking this last week like we wanted it to look with the run, and they were able to get a lot of work done on the ground. Again, another run-first offense. So I am interested in Kenneth Walker for sure at 5.8K. And again, DeAndre Swift, he's another option for me in that game that everyone's going to stack. He's still going to be a lower-owned option. Tight ends, I already mentioned Kyle Pitts at 3.9K and Hawkinson at 3.8, and Njoku. I'm interested in Njoku just as a deep GPP play. I'm probably personally not going to get to him, but I do see some appeal there in the GPPs because no one's going to roster him. He's 4.1K. That price is not super attractive, but I do think that the spot is a good one for him against these Packers. All right, some other pivots here that I'm into. I'm into Chris Olave at 5.2K. I already kind of explained that one there, but that's more of a game stack thing for sure. Jerry Jeudy really jumps out to me as a solid play. For whatever reason, I am getting to, the point where I'm believing more that these Browns, Packers game is going to be pretty competitive, and the Browns are going to be, somewhat close to this. At the moment, it is definitely leaning more towards the Packers. Line open at 6.5 in terms of the Packers, 7.5 now, but percentage of bets and the money is on the Browns. I am interested also in Jerry Jeudy at 5.2K. I think he's an interesting guy here. This Browns game, a lot of the public seems to be, on the Browns here. 63% of the bets are on them, 54% of the money. So it's very kind of a public play here, but I do think this Browns team does give the Packers fits. I think I'm siding with the public on this one. So Jerry Jeudy at 5.2K. At some point, he's going to have that blow up game. So for the purposes of our GPP, I think this is definitely a guy I want to get to here and there. And another guy here is Ricky Pearsall, 5.5K. The Cardinal secondary is really struggling, and all their starting corners are out. So Ricky Pearsall at 5.5K is definitely an interesting guy as well as a pivot off of what we're typically going to see out there in terms of chalk. Just taking a look here, and then let's get to my plays though. So here are the guys, and I'm doing this a little bit differently again, but I think it's a more of a service to you guys. At the moment, these are guys that are in 80% of my lineups that I've tinkered with, and I've made about half a dozen lineups. So you guys in about 60 to 80% of my lineups or more at this moment. This could change for sure. I will tinker throughout the weekend. It is Friday midday, and we haven't even got all the practice report injuries yet. So this is subject to change. But for me, it's Saquon Barkley. You know, I mentioned already that I'm interested in stacking this game here. And I'm interested in running Saquon Barkley and, you know, running it back with Puka Nacua. I think that's a stack that I'm going to have in most of my lineups for sure. You know, this Rams defense, if I can find here, you know, Thunder Dan, again, let me see if I can pull this up here for Thunder Dan. Thank you, Thunder Dan, for all of your, you know, great service to my show already. I can't get enough of Thunder Dan. I promise you, I'm not like going out of my way to just like copy his homework or something, but like he is right here where he's talking about the Rams as being a run funnel defense, number 18th in the run against the run and number 3 against the pass. It is a really good solid pass defense. So you know, the run is open here, and we know that the Eagles want to run the heck out of the ball with Saquon Barkley. So absolutely think that that's on the table here, and we're going to get a whole heck of a lot of that. So I do like me some Saquon Barkley here. He is one of my, I guess you call him core plays, right, so far. Another guy is Jonathan Taylor. I already mentioned before why I like him. And Jordan Mason, also mentioned already why I like him as well. And then Puka Nacua, of course. You know, I'm bringing it back with Puka. You know, I think, again, everyone's going to stack that Dallas Chicago game. I want to stack the Bears side probably if I'm going to stack it, because everyone's going to be on the Cowboys. We all see how bad Tyreek Stevenson is. We all see how bad the Bears defense is. People are less seeing how bad the Cowboys defense is, but it is there. You know, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go probably like DJ Moore. I'm going to go, you know, DeAndre Swift. I think you stack DeAndre Swift with Caleb Williams as well, because DeAndre Swift does get receiving touchdowns. He is in the passing game. He's getting every single touch, basically. I do. Oh, you know what? One thing I want to touch on before we go, a Houston stack. I think Nico Collins, they were really trying to force that ball to Nico Collins at the end of the game. 7.3K is his price. This is a nice matchup here against Jacksonville. So, you know, getting him with Stroud, who's really been struggling as well, I think is a nice, like going to be very low ownership play on this slate. And so I think Stroud and a Nico Collins stack is really interesting for sure. And then I think, you know, in terms of what games I want to stack the most, since I'm not stacking that Chicago game, is I want to stack the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots game. As I said, Drake May is one of my favorite plays at quarterback. And I want to stack that Rams and Philly game. I think that's going to be really competitive as well. I'm trying to stop myself from trying to stack that Browns Packers game. I just think it's going to be more of a defensive slog than anything else, but it is an interesting one for sure. And then I do like also the Colts receivers. You know, this is another, if you want to get low-owned guys on your team against the Seattle defense. Seattle defense is good for sure, but they're not like, you know, oppressively good, right? So I think you can also get two guys. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about the right team. Indiana, this Tennessee Titans defense is not very good. You can get to Pittman, you can get to Downs, you can get to Alec Pierce and Mitchell. So there you have it. Those are my top plays for week 3 and a recap for week 2 for Pivot Point DFS. Again, I am Keith Cork. You can follow me on Twitter at that thing at the bottom of the screen there, which you'll see. It is at DataDrivenOMS, at DataDrivenOMS. Sorry, I'm a little out of sorts here. I am doing this a little bit earlier than I usually do because it's hard with 3 kids and a wife that works at night, man. It is tough. But if you do want to support me in my work, you know, please do follow me on Twitter. Give the YouTube channel a like and subscribe. And, you know, make sure you shout out to me. Let me know what you like or dislike, you know, with this whole thing going on. Hopefully we do pick up some momentum here. Hopefully it's a big week for us. I think there's a lot of really good opportunities in the slate. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in a couple of days and getting back to you guys. But hey, until then, go get that money.